7.3, factoring, specifically sum and difference of cubes on this lesson. So we're going to practice this factoring. Unfortunately, there is not a lot to factoring except recognizing what kind it is and then applying that process. So the first thing that we're going to do for sum and difference of cubes is we're going to write down the steps we need to perform the sum and difference of cubes options. The first step that you're going to perform when you know it's sum and difference of cubes, you're going to cube root. The opposite of a cube is a cube root. A cube looks like this. Cube root looks like this. Okay, don't forget cube, cube root. We're going to cube root both terms. You'll know what I mean in a second when we work one. Actually, I guess I could put my first example out to the side here. So I'll go ahead and put my first example and we'll work each step as we do this. Okay, now it is important when you're doing the sum and difference of cubes that the first thing you look for is, does it have a greatest common factor? That's before we even do these steps. So 27 I know is divisible by 3 and 9. 8 is not divisible by 3 or by 9. 8 is divisible by 2 and 4. Neither of those will go into 27. So I don't have a greatest common factor because they don't both have a variable either. So when I look at my flow chart, I'm at binomials, two terms, 1, 2. Okay, difference of squares. The hint here is squares. That's not a square. That's a cube. So I'm going down to sum and difference of cubes, and then we're going to follow these steps that I have given. You will want to make sure you know how to use your calculator, so I will show you on this video. Turn it on. Okay, we'll deal with that in a second. But our first job here is you're going to cube root both terms. So we need to do that because it didn't have a greatest common factor. So we're going to take, you have to go to math and look for your little cube roots, number 4. We're going to cube root 27. The cube root of 27 is 3. And we're going to cube root x cubed. So please remember that if you have a cube and you cube root it, these are inverses. That leaves me with x. Then I'm going to do math number 4, okay, and I need to cube root the 8, because notice my step says cube root both terms. I cube rooted 27 and x cubed. Now I'm cube rooting 8, and I'm getting plus 2. So that's my first step. Set my calculator aside. You're going to have a whole second parenthesis, and we're going to talk about that right now. But let's write our second step down. Sorry about the bell. Second step. You need to square both terms. Okay, you're going to square both terms. Now you might want to write yourself a little note. This is a new set of parentheses. Okay? New set of parentheses. You're not using the same set any longer. So notice that I took the cube root of 27, cube root of x cubed, plus sign stayed, 8 cube rooted is 2. So I did that first step. My second step is to square both of these. That means that I do 3 squared, or 3 times 3, that's 9. X times x, x squared. So I have squared my first term. It says both, so I also need to square my 2. Now this is important. What is 2 times 2? That's 4 plus 4. Okay? So I'm almost finished. I only need the middle piece right here. So I cube rooted everything. I square both, and I'm almost done. So my third step is to multiply. I don't know how to multiply. Both together. Okay, so I'm going to multiply both of the terms. Oh, I guess actually I don't need this right now. I'm going to multiply both of my terms. That means these two. You can say from number 1, from step 1. You're going to multiply these two together. So 3x times 2 is 6x. That's what goes right there in the middle. Be careful. Don't put anything in front of it because your last and final step is to change the sign. Okay. you're going to change the sign. What do I mean by that? It started off as addition, so when I cube rooted everything, it's addition. That means right here it has to be subtraction. Okay, so those are our steps for cube rooting, or sum and difference of cubes, sorry. These are our 4 steps, so we're going to work a second one now. We're going to work 8x cubed minus 125. Now, again, per my factor flowchart, my first job is to check for a greatest common factor. And when I look at this problem, I know that 2, 4, and 8 all divide nice and pretty into 8. But 2 does not go into 125. If you're not sure, you check 4. If you're not sure, you check 8. But nothing works. You know 5 goes into 125, but not here. So I don't have a greatest common factor. And when I look on my flowchart, again, that means I'm going to binomials. I don't have a square because it doesn't say x squared, it says x cubed. So I'm going to my cubes. And when I do that, I'm going to follow these steps every time. So my first step is to cube root both terms. So I've got a little parenthesis and then I've got a bigger parenthesis. Step 1 goes in my little parenthesis. You need to cube root 8, but you just did it up here. It was 2. And don't forget that when you cube root x cubed, you get x. Notice the sign is a subtraction, so I keep it that way. Now to cube root 125, you're going to go math number 4. Oops, I don't know what I was doing. 125. We got 5, so that's what's going to go right here. So I cube rooted both terms. That is a check mark. Done. I'm going to square both terms. 2 times 2 is 4. X times x is x squared. Now be careful here. You've got negative 5 times negative 5. A negative times a negative is a positive. If you're going to put that in your calculator, you make sure you type it in just like this. You see that I put the negative 5 squared, which is going to give me positive 25. I have some students who want to type this. That is not negative 5 squared. That is 5 squared. The negative is not being squared. You see the difference in the answer? This is the right way to type it in. You have to square the negative with the 5, so it's got to be in parentheses. A negative times a negative. Okay. A negative times a negative is always a positive. Pay attention to that. Now I'm going to multiply both together from number 1. That means these two. 2x times 5 is 10x. And then I need to change the sign. Started with a minus. I have a minus, so we need to go to a plus. It has to do with the original problem. This should match. It changes right there. I'll show you why in just a second. First I want to practice a few more of these. Okay, let's do the third one, 125x cubed plus 216. Now, how in the world am I supposed to know if that has a greatest common factor or it doesn't? It is difficult to know, but I know that 5 divides nice and pretty into 125. So I check 216. I should already know that that doesn't work, but just in case. Alright, so it has no greatest common factor, and I have a binomial. So on my flowchart again, no GCF, binomial. I don't have squares because it says x cubed, so I'm going to sum or difference. It can be either one for cubes. My first step is to cube root both terms. So we don't have to do 125 because we just did it. It's 5. That's going to be 5x plus, again, this was an original addition. So I'm going to go math 4. I need to take the cube root of 216. So it's 6. Okay. If I do 6 times 6 times 6, that's 3 sixes. That's the cube. Alright, now, after I cube root both terms, I'm going to square both of these terms. 5 times 5 is 25. X times x is x squared. 6 times 6, if you're not sure, you use a calculator, but it is 36. Okay, you're going to multiply them together. These from the first step, 5x times 6 is 30x. Make sure you change the sign. It was addition, now it's subtraction. Okay, that is the way these work every single time. So this last one, I'm just going to give you a little bit extra practice because my job is to start at the greatest common factor and see if it has one. Well, does 2 divide nice and pretty into 16? It does. So my GCF is 2. Notice that they don't have a variable in common, just the number 2. So 2x cubed divided by 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1x cubed. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Now, it'd be nice if you were done, but that's not generally the way it works in the factoring world, so I took out the greatest common factor. What I'm now looking at is only what I have left after taking out the greatest common factor. And I notice that there are 2 terms, so I'm binomials. X cubed plus 8. That means I'm going down to sum and difference of cubes. Do not get rid of the GCF that you already took. Keep it in the front. And then you may ignore it. So I'm going to apply my cube process here. I'm going to cube root both terms. My first term is x cubed, so to cube root it, that's x. Cube root of 8. If you're not sure, you can look right up here. We had 8, we cube rooted it, and got 2. Or you can type it in your calculator again. Cube root of 8, it'll tell you. Now, I have cube rooted both terms. I need to square both terms. X times x, x squared. 2 times 2, notice it's positive times a positive, which is a positive. Then my job is to multiply both together. These 2, nothing to do with the GCF, leave it alone. These 2, x times 2 is 2x. Don't forget to change your sign. It was positive, so now it needs to be negative. Okay, I'm going to give you one more, and then I'm going to work it and show you why this is so nice, and it works out really nicely. 5. We're going to go x cubed minus I'm just making sure I get the right. Okay, we're going to go minus 64. Okay. So this is the last one I want to practice. I'm going to show you why it works, just so you have that knowledge. If you notice, they both do not have a variable. 1 and 64 have no GCF. So I need a small parenthesis and a large parenthesis. Why do I know that? There was no GCF. This is a binomial, 2 terms, and it is a cube, so we're doing sum and difference of cubes. First step is to cube root. Well, the cube root of x cubed is x. Keep the same sign. Again, you can use a calculator, and you can do math, taking the cube root of 64, and that is 4. So we're going to have minus 4 right here. That's the first step, cube root everybody. Second step, square these guys. X times x. Be careful, a negative times a negative is a positive, no matter what. Negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 4 is 16. Then I'm going to multiply these 2 together to get me 4x. And at the end, you change the sign. Now, why does this work? This is factoring, but we just finished multiplication. So, I'm going to show you by multiplying these out. Are you required to do this? No. Could you check your work to make sure you did it right? Absolutely. Okay. So, we have our box, and we're going to fill it in. X squared times x is x cubed. 4x times x is 4x squared. 16 times x is 16x. Now we're doing x squared times negative 4, so that's negative 4x squared. 4x times negative 4 is negative 16x. Now, 16 times negative 4, you may not know that. Not a big deal, you can put it in the calculator, but I'm going to tell you right now it's negative 64 just because I know that. But you can use a calculator to check. Now I'm going to combine my like terms. Notice x cubed. That's the only one. Got it. Here's the squares. I got 4x squared minus 4x squared. That's 0. That's nothing. They're opposites, inverses. 16x minus 16x. That's also nothing. Minus 64. It is what I started with. This is why we have a sign, and you have to change it. It will allow these two to cancel every time. That is the sum and difference of cubes. If you will apply those 4 steps, you will be able to factor every single time.